Continuing our discussions in the broad area of psychoanalysis and Indian tradition, we enter today into Natya Shastra. We have taken a concise look, in fact, a very concise look. I should say an over-concise look at Bhagavad Gita, Brahma Sutra, Upanishad, and Yoga Sutra. Today we do the fifth text in the same over-concise way. We take a look today at Natya Shastra, an ancient Indian foundational text on aesthetics. Natya Shastra is a foundation text in Indian aesthetics. Aesthetics in the broad sense of the word, as the word is understood in the world of philosophy. Aesthetics that includes not only the study of form, but also the study of arts and the whole idea of beauty and the enjoyment of beauty in its various forms, something that comes close to the concept of rasa, which we will discuss today. Natya Shastra, literally, Shastra is science or treatise or a compendium or an encyclopedic book or a foundational book, but a profound book. Shastra is a profound book. It can be also translated as science, but broadly and in a soft way, a soft meaning of Shastra would be a profound work, foundational work, direction-giving work. Natya is performance, comes from the root word nat. So Natya can be translated as drama, as performance, or broadly as anything done in the area of performance, all the performing arts. So Natya Shastra is profound foundational text on performing arts or aesthetics in general. This is a foundation text for Indian music, Indian dance, drama. In drama, all parts of drama, including costumes, including sets, including acting, painting, literature, poetry. Natya Shastra is a foundation text for this entire area of Indian aesthetics. In music, when you go to learn classical music, you are trained how to play and experience with music various rasas. And rasa theory comes out of Natya Shastra. You will see that in a moment. If you go to learn dance, one very important element of training in classical dance is abhinaya. And in abhinaya or acting through dance, depicting various rasas is one of the core elements of training in Indian classical dance, and the rasa theory comes out of Natya Shastra. Similarly, in literature and poetry, the concept of rasa is central, and the rasa theory comes out of Natya Shastra. It was written by Bharat Muni, and the dates vary from 200 to 500 BC. The most consensus is it is somewhere in this range that Natya Shastra was composed. However, I personally believe somewhere around 700 BC seems to be a more accurate date, because the sage Panini, who wrote Sanskrit grammar, codified Sanskrit grammar in Ashtadhyayi book of Sanskrit grammar, he mentions Natya Shastra. So Natya Shastra was written before him, and Panini's age is supposed to be around 500 BC. So in all probability, Natya Shastra would have been before 500 BC. Somewhere around 700 BC seems to be more probable, but we leave it to those who are interested deeply in this area. Suffice it to say, it's a very ancient text, the first text on aesthetics in the world. The book is thrown into 36 chapters. In each chapter, you have poetic verses, and it amounts to somewhere around 6,000 verses. Like in all ancient texts, there is an element of insertion and contamination, that some of the verses don't seem to be flowing from the original text, they seem to be inserted inside. And that is natural for any ancient text. However, for the moment, we just be with it, that the book has 36 chapters and 6,000 poetic verses. The great philosopher Abhinav Gupta has made a very popular and profound commentary on Natya Shastra. And he liked Natya Shastra so much that he actually called it Natya Veda. To call something Veda is to endow upon that thing something very reverential, very profound. And coming from Abhinav Gupta, it acquires flavor of being profound and deep. In the Natya Shastra, there are many elements. There are elements of drama, there are elements of costume, element of color, element of music. What we will do today is we will take up one particular part of Natya Shastra, which is rasa theory. And this rasa theory is something which is of great and central importance to music, to dance, to literature, to poetry in Hindu civilization. And this is also an area where we can study this area from a standpoint of psychoanalysis, with the spirit of study, compare, contrast, synthesize. So let us start with the rasa theory of Natya Shastra. What rasa is? We will go into a more elemental definition in the next slide. To start off the discussion on rasa, literally rasa means the juice. In a very concrete way, we talk about mango juice, orange juice. Similarly, the juice of experience. That we experience an event on the whole, after the event is over, what is the juice that is left over of that experience? So it is the affective juice that an experience leaves with us. very close to but not Juisa. Rasa is the central juice of an experience, a core overall feeling that we feel after the experience is over. The feeling starts while the experience is on, and the feeling matures and becomes pronounced and explicit after the event is over and we realize what exactly have we felt in that experience. In Ayurveda, there is a very good term called vipaka. The final remnant, the final distilled entity, concentrated entity, which is a central and representative entity of the whole event. So if we say rasa or the juice of experience, obviously we have experiences where after the experiences we feel happiness, we feel sadness, we feel guilt, we feel pain, we feel fear, we feel enthusiasm. There is this broad range of feelings that we have. And here it is almost like the color theory, that there are three primary colors, a few secondary colors, a few tertiary colors, and then all of them combine to create millions of colors. So similarly, we are looking at the core rasas, that how many rasas are there, because we can feel so many things. Natya Shastra defines 9 rasas, and these 9 rasas are called Nava rasas. Nava is 9, rasa is rasa, the juice of experience. So Natya Shastra talks about 9 rasas. Some people say Natya Shastra originally talked about 8 rasas, and the 9th rasa was later added to the list of 8. So these are the 9 rasas Natya Shastra talks about. Navrasas. Some scholars say that originally we had 8, and the 9th Shantam rasa was added later. I don't feel so, because this Shantam rasa actually is something so central to Indian spirituality. And in Indian culture, Hindu culture, everything is informed by a spiritual impulse. Natya Shastra, rasa theory also is informed by a spiritual impulse. The whole idea is to sublimate all of these rasas till one is living an ordinary life and maximize the spiritual Shantam rasa, and then reduce other rasas and have one's life filled up by the juice of Shantam rasa, which is the state of enlightenment. So I personally feel it should have been there right from beginning, but scholars say we had 8 and the 9th was added later. Let us look at the 9 rasas. The first is Shringar rasa. Shringar refers to adornment. So the love rasas are here on the screen. First rasa is Shringar rasa. Shringar refers to adornment, romance, love, attraction. And like in case of chakras, every rasa is linked to a deity and a color. It can also be linked to a sound and a mantra. But for the moment, just make a note of it. We won't go in detail of it. When we go deep into idol therapy, then we can make use of the presiding deity, the idol of the presiding deity, the color, the sound, the mantra, and so on. So Shringar Rasa pertains to the feelings that arise related to adornment, decking up, romance, love, attraction. Presiding deity Vishnu, color light green. Second rasa, Hasya rasa. Related to humor, laughter, comedy. Presiding deity Shiva, color white. Why this color? Why this deity? We can go in details when we go in depth of idol therapy and use rasa theory for idol therapy. For the moment, we will leave it aside. Third rasa, Rudra rasa. Rudra is related to destruction, anger, aggression, fury. Presiding deity, Shiva, color red. The Rudra rasa is very close to the pleasure of the death instinct. Freud's death instinct. Shiva then becomes the god of Thanatos. Karun rasa, the rasa related to empathy, compassion, service, caring. Strangely, presiding deity is Yama, the god of death. Color is grey. There is a mistake. So we can take this into two directions. Karun ras, the ras of melancholy, the sap of melancholy, the joy of suffering. Freud's joy of the death instinct of masochism. And this is thousands of years before Freud. Karun rasa can also be taken to Karuna, and there it can be stretched to mean empathy, compassion, service, caring. Presiding deity Yama, which is more a deity of suffering, pain, and melancholy and empathy, less of these elements. Color grey. Vibhatsa. One more form of Freud's death instinct. You really have to stretch Thanatos to include Vibhatsa. But it is the experience, the juice, the enjoyment of the ugly, the dirty, the cheap, the disgust, and aversion. the feelings of all of them. And there can be a secret enjoyment, or there may not be a secret enjoyment of these difficult feelings. When you put together the Karun Rasa and the Bibhats Rasa, they too will come close to Juisa, Lacan's concept of Juisa. And when you put Rudra, Karun and Bibhatsa, 2, 3 together, it comes close to Freud's idea of the pleasure of the death instinct, the joy of suffering. The Bhaya Rasa or the Bhayanakam Rasa or the Bhayankam Rasa, it is the feeling of fear, anxiety, horror, terror. Presiding deity is Yama, color is black. So if you add this, 3, 4, 5, 6 can be added to constitute Freud's death instinct. I mean the relishing of Freud's death instinct, the aggregate effects related to the death instinct, and if you look at 5 and 6 together, 4, 5, 6, they come near to Juism. The Veer Rasa or the Viram Rasa relates to the feelings of bravery, heroism, courage, presiding deity Indra, color saffron. Adbhut Rasa, the rasa of wonder, surprise, curiosity, amazement, being spellbound, presiding deity is Brahma, color yellow. And the Shant Rasa or the Shantam Rasa, it is the juice of peace, bliss, rest, being settled. The deity is Vishnu, color is perpetual white. So we see these are the nerve rasas defined in Natya Shastra. And each of the rasa is related to certain experiences. Experience of, in Shringar, the experience of adornment, of romance. In Hasya, the experience of laughter, of humor. In Karuna, the experience of suffering, the experience of empathy. So these 9 rasas are what you feel after experiencing these events. This is the core central feeling that you have. And this core central feeling is not one affect. It is an aggregate, a compound of many affects. So we cannot equate a rasa to an affect. But rasa is a package of affect which is left over after an experience is over, and the elements of the package are being experienced even as the experience is going on. But after it is over, the whole package is experienced, consciously recognized, and one can reflect upon it both at the moment and in retrospect. Now we come to the more elemental understanding of the rasa. So we come to rasa and bhava. Bhava is elemental emotion. So its equivalent in English would be emotion, a rough equivalent. Actually, there is no equivalent, but it's a rough equivalent is emotion. Or affect, let us say. In Natya Shastra, three types of bhavas are defined. Sthayi bhava. Sthayi is enduring. Enduring bhava. They are 11 in number, listed out here. Natya Shastra describes Three types of bhavas. Sthayi bhavas, enduring emotions. Just as in cognitive sciences, we talk about short-term memory and long-term memory. And we define short-term as actually very short-term. In fact, a better description would be short-term, medium-term, and long-term. But while doing cognitive testing, we often use only two terms, short-term memory and long-term memory. Similarly, we can talk here about short-term emotion and long-term emotion. So, sthayi bhava are long-term emotions. 11 in number listed out in Natya Shastra, like love, sadness, disgust. They endure over a period of time. And of course, we are not meaning hours and days. We are still talking about minutes. But it's a relative endurance, relative to some other emotions which are very, very fleeting. So it's a relative endurance. So sthayi bhavas are long-term emotions. 11 in number, love, mirth, grief, anger, enthusiasm, fear, disgust, surprise, vatsalya. It is a feeling of maternal feeling of love and care of the mother towards the child, vatsalya. Sneha is love, usually between friends. Not in the romantic sense, not in the sexual sense, but in a more platonic sense of love. So sthayi bhavas are those emotions which endure. Then the second is those emotions which are more fleeting, which are more short term. They are referred to as sanchari bhava. 30 in number, like anger, irritation, laughter. And I have taken a list here of 30 from Professor Ami Upadhyay's paper. You can read that paper. It's a very good paper on Natya Shastra. You can have different lists also. If you go into different papers, you can have a list of more than 11 or less than 11, more than 30, less than 30. But some list I have taken here. You can just go through the 30 emotions which are more fleeting than the sthayi bhavas. And then we have sattvic bhav, and these are involuntary states of mind like paralysis, fainting, coma. These are states of mind and certain feelings we feel when we are in extreme situations. 8 of such bhavas have been listed out. So we see such a detailed listing out of a classification of different feelings. One of the shortcomings in psychoanalysis is we don't have a proper classification of pleasures, of pains, of affects. It's a define as you go, use as you go kind of situation. This is something we can learn and bring into psychoanalysis. I personally use a classification typology of pleasures, which is slightly different from the rasa theory, but it goes on the lines of the rasa theory in terms of classification and creating a typology. I would divide all pleasures and pains into 4 or 5 categories. Let us look at those categories. Sense pleasures related to all the senses. Ego pleasures related to greed, power, achievement, success. Emotional pleasures related to the area of emotions of relationships. Intellectual pleasures related to knowledge, artistic pleasures, mystical pleasures, and spiritual pleasures. And corresponding to every pleasure, there would be a pain. So pleasure and pain get divided into these categories: sense pleasure and pain. Sense pleasure, of course, we have a sense pain correspondingly. So sense pleasures, ego pleasures, emotional pleasures, intellectual pleasures, creative pleasure or artistic pleasures, mystical pleasures, spiritual pleasures. 7 categories of pleasures, and correspondingly 7 categories of pain. Not exactly on the lines of rasa theory, parallel to it. Natya Shastra then brings in 2 more elements before going into an elemental definition of rasa. It talks about the vibhava. Vibhava is the stimulant, that object that stimulates our response, our emotional response. And all objects which are stimulants are divided into 2. All stimulants are divided into 2. In any given event, the central stimulant is called alambana, and other catalytic stimulants which are secondary are called udipana. For example, if on the stage a drama of Julius Caesar is being played, and we have a scene where Julius Caesar is talking to his girl, the actor and the actresses and the actress in that moment become the central stimulant for the audience. At the same time, the set, the music, the lights, they add to the creation of the feeling. So they are catalytic stimulants. So stimulants are divided into 2: alambana, central stimulants, and udipana, catalytic stimulants. And together they are called vibhava, all stimulants. So there is a stimuli coming from a stimulant which starts the process. Just give me a moment. Sorry. Anubhava is the conscious experience felt by the person. So when the vibhava or the stimulant is recognized by the psychological system, deep inside there is a response, but the full response is not felt consciously by the person. That part of the response which is consciously felt by the person is referred to as the anubhava. The conscious experience felt by the person, it's a part of the total response, because a large part of the response will always remain unconscious. So Natya Shastra says it gives this sequence of event, that first there is a vibhava, a stimulant, an object which provides a stimulus that creates a fleeting sanchari bhava. We respond to that stimulus with a fleeting short-term emotion. And that short-term emotion gets a long-term emotion involved along with it. And together, a confederation of bhavas, a confederation of emotions is created. And out of it, a part of it is experienced consciously called the anubhava. And as the anubhava ends, it leaves behind its vipaka, its sum total, its concentrate, its sap of experience, the concentrate, rasa. So the anubhava leaves behind rasa. Anubhava ends and then rasa is experienced. This is Natya Shastra's sequence. In my opinion, this sequence can be redrawn to make it more accurate. I would put this sequence as there is a vibhava, a stimulant, a stimulus, an object of stimulus providing us with stimulation. So there is a stimulant. The stimulant is recognized, and in response, the sthai bhava is activated. If small spurts of sthai bhava are given out, it appears as sanchari bhava. However, it is a possibility that this sanchari bhava in turn will excite more of the sthai bhava, or the sthai bhava will release a part of sthai bhava and a small part of sanchari bhava, and the two together will get one or start acting in unison or acting together. And this in turn will lead to a full response, a part of which will be consciously experienced, resulting in anubhava, and the anubhava at the end of it will leave behind rasa. And this rasa can be any of the 9 rasas, or it can be even a combination of rasas. It's not necessary you should feel only one rasa at the end of one experience. Most experiences will leave behind 2 or 3 rasas, a complex compound of rasas. And obviously, Natya Shastra is referring to consciously felt rasa, but there is also an unconsciously felt rasa, as we know in psychoanalysis. So in psychoanalysis, we can expand the meaning of rasa and the meaning of anubhav. Anubhav need not be kept only conscious. It can be stretched to include unconscious also. And the rasa also will be in the conscious and in the unconscious. Rasa is the vipaka, the overall juice of experience. So as I said, in the heat model of the mind that I have created, I have given this sequence. There is a stimulus, there is a recognition of the stimulus, there is an epistemology of this recognition, detailed out in heat. There is interpretation using faculty elementals. There is evocation of affect, sthai bhava. There can be an accompanying activation of temporary fleeting effects, or fleeting effects and enduring effect both, resulting in anubhava, resulting in rasa. So in the heat model of the mind that I have created, we can discuss in more elemental terms how the rasa is created and the process of creation of the rasa. Rasa is not a fundamental affect, it's a confederation of affects. It's a compound actually of effects, not a confederation. A compound, a complicated compound. Let me say, use a chemistry word. It's a complex, not even a compound. It's a complex entity of effects. Rasa is like a solution, a chemical solution of many effects. It is the aggregate juice left post experience. And these rasas are 9 in number. How do we look at it from a psychoanalytic standpoint? How can we do a compare-contrast synthesis? Concept of rasa can enrich our whole theory building because it will bring in a classification and typology of pleasures and pains, which is missing. So it will add the necessary terms to the language of psychoanalysis. Second important element, Karun rasa, since ancient times, the juice of melancholy, not only in Hindu spirituality and Hindu psychology, even in Greece, pathos was never considered pathological. It was only certain excesses of pathos that was considered pathological. So this one pole theory of pleasure maximization, that is a central point of psychoanalysis, contested by Freud's death instinct concept, that needs balancing out, enrichment, needs company of Karun rasa. In the ancient Indian text, the joy of melancholy, the joy of suffering was never seen as always pathological. Like in Greek tragic dramas, the joy of a tragic drama was never seen as pathological, was never seen as pathological masochism. So Karun rasa is also a rasa. Juisa is also a pleasure. So bringing in the rasa theory into psychoanalysis will not only enrich language, but also widen the joy of normalcy. Similarly, bibhitsa rasa, the joy of the dirty, the joy of the vulgar, the joy of the disorderly, is not essentially pathological. It's normal till the limits of normalcy. Similarly, the Vir Rasa, Jung would be delighted to hear it. Thousands of years before him, the juice of experience of the hero archetype was talked about. The Vir Rasa, the rasa that you get after activating and living out your hero archetype. So stretching across schools of psychoanalysis, rasa theory can be used. In fact, one way to use rasa theory is to use it in conjunction with the archetypal theory of Jung. Gels in very well. Rasa theory can be used in psychoanalysis to talk about classification of desires. Does a person have adequate desire for every rasa? Or does he have deficiency of desire in some area and excess of desire in some other area? Does a person have adequate experiences of each rasa? They need not be equal. Adequate need not be equal. Adequate may differ from person to person, but in that subjective context, in that proportionate context, there definitely is a volume of adequacy. Does the person have adequate experience of all the rasas? If not, there has to be balancing out. And if not done, we should see a compensation in dreams. Too much of one rasa or too less of one rasa in conscious life will lead to the excess of that rasa in dreams. So the mechanism of compensation will come into play. And each person's self will need to experience a particular proportion and volume of each rasa according to his program of life. So the rasa theory can be very neatly synthesized with the Jungian theory, even with Erik Erikson's theory. We also saw how certain rasas can be combined to be used in conjunction with ideas of juisa or idea of death instinct or idea of hero archetype in psychoanalysis. In dream analysis, we can use rasa theory to see which rasas are being indulged in the dreams. And is the compensation at work? And can that insight be used to have more conscious experiences of that particular rasa in the waking state so that that rasa doesn't have to be indulged in the dreams? The rasa theory brings about the idea of classifying pleasures and pains into more specific and more scientific and more concrete terms. So we can think and theorize and conceptualize and heal also in a more exact, accurate way. Rasa theory also brings in the concept of stimulus adequacy. The vibhava, the stimulant. Do we have adequate and good enough stimulants so that each of the rasas can be activated and experienced? So just as there is a balanced biological diet, there is a balanced emotional diet. And in that balanced emotional diet, a balance of rasa experience is central to it. Ayurveda talks about all rasas should be there in the plate when you eat food. Similarly, a balanced emotional diet means a balance of rasas. Different from person to person, different over the age for the same person, but at any given point, there is an optimum rasa balance. Stimulus adequacy is a problem in the age of object scarcity that we all live in. Kohut talked about Freud's patients being the guilty man suffering from drive frustration, and his own patients being the tragic man suffering from object loss, bad object experiences, and difficult object relations. Where early life difficult object relations lead to creation of unhealthy self, which in turn becomes the center for pathology. So does a person have adequate stimuli to stimulate all the rasas? If not, how to arrange for it? Does the person have adequately good interpretative process inside of him so that rasa activation can happen? In case stimulus is adequate, but it is not activating adequate rasa inside because of the interpretative process. There may be pathology schemas involved in the interpretative process, which may not allow the person to live a balanced rasa diet or a balanced rasa life. Does the person spend time in relishing of experience? This is a conscious relishing. Most people suffer from an anxiety of relishing. We want to relish, but we don't want to be conscious in that process. We want to move in haste and restlessness through that process. We don't want to be in the present. We don't want to be calm. We don't want to be conscious and slow. We don't really want to extract every drop of pleasure. There is an anxiety of that relishing. And there is a compulsive, obsessive haste and restlessness which has become a part of us. We are always anxious, restless, and in haste. More to do with our social training and the professional environment in which we live. But we need to slow down to be in the present, to extract every drop of rasa, of experiences. Conscious relishing is not only psychologically health-giving, it is also a spiritual process. It can actually lead us to freedom from the desire itself, or partly a partial freedom from the desire. Where can rasa theory go into psychoanalysis in more structural terms? In model of the mind, in pathogenesis, in healing technique, in the language of psychoanalysis, in psychological testing, in use of art and rasa theory for self-work, direct use of art therapy for healing, in dream analysis and dream work, including lucid dream work, including active imagination. We can combo rasa theory very well there. In use of music, dance, and devotion. At present, it's a blasphemy in psychoanalysis, but in times to come, I'm sure it will get integrated. Therapy will move into a more holistic form. It will be psychoanalytically anchored, but holistic. Anchoring will always be psychoanalytic because it's a very fundamental theory and a very deep and powerful theory of the internal world. So in the Western domain, the anchoring will be psychoanalytic, but overall holistic. When it comes to the East, there will be a anchoring of some of theory deeper than psychoanalysis in more elemental terms, in terms of chakras, and deeper than that in terms of elementals or the bhutas. We'll move first from the conceptual elementals and then into scientific elementals, empirical elementals. It empowers the person to conceptually analyze life with this new idea of rasa theory. Many people today suffer from isolation of affect or different degrees of isolation of affect. And this rasa theory and working with the rasa theory and giving oneself a balanced rasa diet is a very good way to heal it. Rasa theory can also be used for affect release. If direct affect release is not happening in emotion-centered therapies or ISTDP, one can start with the rasa theory get the person in tune with the whole concept, request him to feel all rasas and slowly overcome the isolation of affect, fear of affect, and be more open to catharsis and restructuring. One non-clinical application of psychoanalysis is in arts, and in that interdisciplinary area of psychoanalysis and arts, rasa theory can be profitably anchored. Thank you.